This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day. Carefully crafted for you by humans, so meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fully Managed podcast. Thank you, Mike, so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So today we're going to start, because you are in Philly, we're going to start with some rapid fire Philly questions. This is my favorite thing to do because I can talk about Philly and I love this place. And also I get some recommendations from you. So this is selfishly and not for you at all. Okay. First one. You ready?
Go.
Let's go. Okay. First word you think of when you hear Philadelphia.
Oh man, so much. Colorful.
Yep. I'd say that. Colorful in many ways. Truly. What celebrity do you think of when you think of Philadelphia?
Oh man, I hate to say Will Smith, but that was the first thing that popped into my head, which is terrible. I need to do better than that.
You know, that's fine, because I was going to say if you say Rocky, you get executed live.
No, well, it's funny though, because I'm not like, I so appreciate sort of the depth of Philly, and I think about like a lot of the people who are from the area that are, certainly more interesting to me. I'm a huge into sports, so like most of the celebrities I think of sort of definitely start with the Eagles, Philly, and that sort of thing. So,
well, it's the first thing you think of. Sometimes it's not going to be the most.
Can I say? I'll amend my my response. The fanatic about that.
That's fine. I mean, he is a celebrity for sure, and it's great that everyone's finding out about him now.
Yep.
All right. Favorite cheesesteak spot? A hard one sometimes.
Oh, this I got on lock. Sonny's in Old City.
Writing that down.
Yeah, it goes under the radar, but it's as good as any of the other cheesesteak places. It's definitely not as crowded, and it's an Old City, which gives you access to more stuff. So like when people visit from out of town, I always send them there because they're usually going to like see Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, that sort of thing, and it's like it's right there. Right.
I love that. I love hearing a new one too, because my favorite cheesesteak in the city is from a juice store that's basically a bodega on like the corner of a street. And so, I think that there's better cheesesteaks who got some Geno's. So that's why I asked. Okay. What's one small business you frequent the most?
In Philly.
Yeah.
Do bars and restaurants count?
Yes, they do, but just so you know, there will be a question about that as well, so you'll need two.
People take it on. Small business that I go to often in Philadelphia. Well, I'm in Fishtown. And our office is here in Fishtown. So I generally, hit up a lot of places in Fishtown. So whether those are sort of bars and restaurants here, places like Harry's or Frankfurt Hall, or even Fishtown Tavern down the street, or like there's the little like I forget what you would call it, but like the little like antique shop down the street here. It's generally where I kind of spend a vast majority of my time, or kind of hitting like Old City, a great little strip there where they have like all the Fruit Fridays and a bunch of little shops there that have all the knickknacks and whatnot that are a ton of fun. But generally, when I think of any sort of small business in Philly, I think of food, I think of the nightlife and that sort of thing. So, and if we skip ahead to the best place, so my like home away from home is a place in South Philly. I live in South Philly, so not too far from where I'm at, called For Pete's Sake. It's at Front and Frisch, great little bar, great family bar, but great during the weekends and whatnot, and the food is excellent.
I've been there. I also live South Philly. I worked at Lorenzo and Sons for 3 years.
Really?
Yeah, in college.
Funny, my son and I go there on fairly regular basis after soccer practices. And so that's definitely a go-to.
Yeah, I was also poached from there for the previous job before the job.
Love it.
That place is very, very close to my heart. So Philly, I think about very often. So it's a lovely place. So thank you for the recommendations. I would be thinking about all of these. I'm unfamiliar with Fishtown, as popular and up and coming as it is very recently. I know very little about it. It's the only place in Philly that I haven't lived. I've lived in every other part.
It's awesome. I definitely recommend. I mean, I try to compare it to like other cities, but I mean, I guess the best you would do is like Brooklyn or something to New York, but it's like it's not that, but it's awesome. It's a great spot. It's fun. We've been here since we moved in 2012. Definitely much different then, and it wasn't quite as developed. But since then, I mean, so much has developed around here. Everything from like not just the bars and restaurants, but the everything about hotels now. Little spots that people can go to stay on the weekends, which is great. And then it's you go down Frankfurt Ave, hop, skip, and a jump from the Delaware. So it's a great spot, great space. I can't speak highly of it enough.
Oh, that's really great to hear. Yeah, I definitely have to explore it more because I see so many advertisements for different places there that I think that are.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you for all these recommendations. I'm giving you one last question because you actually kind of described like 3 that I was going to ask you. So you breezed through those easily. So last note, if you were to change something about Philly, what would it be?
Oh, wow. There's a lot. I love this town. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I've
been
here a long time, and I think it's a great town. And I always tell everybody, if you want a city that's real, that's honest, got a lot of grit down. And I really respect and appreciate that. But just comes along with the grit sometimes. There's some areas that we can clean up a little bit, for sure. And certainly, like a lot of other cities, we're troubled with a lot of the same problems, crime and poverty and that sort of thing. And for such a great city with such a awesome heritage. I mean, we talk about the birth of the country. You talk about where some of the best ideas about freedom and liberty come from. I mean, that's our town. So, and it's baked in everybody here, right? Like you go, people I guess give Eagles fans a bad time, but man, talk about faith, right? Like these are people who care so much. Or like I tell everybody, you want to come see something spectacle, come see the Phillies in the playoffs in October. There's nothing like it. And so I think all of that sort of tied together, definitely that comes with some downsides to do, and I'd love to see that.
I completely agree. There's this camaraderie in Philly that does not exist anywhere else. I've never seen it anywhere else in the same way and vigor as this city.
We wear our hearts on our sleeves, that's for sure.
Yeah, I love it here. Well, that is a perfectly wholesome note to end this game. You did so well. You passed my test. Thank you.
I'm glad.
Nations. I appreciate that. Well, thank you again, Mike, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. This is not about Philly, though, even though you gave me amazing feedback on Philly. This is about you, and you're in Philly, so I guess it's a little bit about Philly. But I want you to tell me a little more about yourself and tell everyone a little more about yourself. So what led you up to where you are now in your professional journey, what you're doing now, and what you're looking for in the future?
Well, I've been doing this for a long time, so I'll give you a little background on that. So O3 is we're digital consultancy. So we work with clients to understand where the gaps exist in their customer or employee experiences, and then help to solve those problems through digital solutions. Traditionally, it's websites, applications, that sort of thing. These days, we're building a lot of AI solutions to help solve those problems. But really, my background, this company, 20 years old, when we started, it was like, hey, this thing called the internet, and, we want to do great things on it. Right. It was a very different world back then. I went to school in Philly. I went to the University of Pennsylvania. And, towards the end of college, it was one of the cool things to start to get into was really what could we do with this whole internet thing. And, I've always sort of looked at that as a guidepost in my career. It's kind of looking at what's next. I think it's a big reason why, over the years, first it was, hey, we're just going to help companies get online. And then it was, hey, now we're going to help, use the online space to help centralize operations for these organizations. Then it was like, hey, these organizations don't even need, brick and mortar stores anymore, or even offices, right? They can function entirely within this ecosystem, right? And then you fast forward to where we're at now, where we're talking about completely reinventing where businesses are in the whole. So I think it's a good way of sort of showing, my career path kind of went that way.
It advanced with technology.
It's funny. I have a degree in economics, which was just a way of me kind of like figuring out how to get into a whole bunch of stuff. Towards the end of college, I got really into design. Over time, that turned into user experience design, which became more practice here at the company. I got right down to even, I started helping writing curriculum for master's programs when they didn't exist in the early 2010s. So, as time progressed, my career sort of progressed with that. I kind of moved from I consider myself a designer, more of a strategist now. And that's what I help clients with now. Really help to figure out what do the roadmaps look like? How does that tie back to the business objectives? And then on the whole, how do we help them sort of improve their companies overall?
I think that's lovely. I think that it's really fun to see a career path kind of move with how the trajectory of like the business is, I guess. It's good because you're advancing at a level of need, which obviously I'm sure you're aware of. But it's something that you don't always see because like if you stayed where you were before and were set on doing that exact thing forever, and didn't adapt, then maybe you would be here today. So to know and be able to move with the times is something.
So I try to tell my kids, you gotta learn how to learn, right?
Yeah.
When I look back what the world was like when we started this business, very different. Very different. Traditional print media was still, very much front and center. The real reason the internet was to help sort of, the advertising world essentially, have a broader reach. Once form and function kind of came together, it just changed things. And then over time that has continued to change. Now you look at, geez, like how we interact with companies in the next 10 years is going to be vastly different, right? All of a sudden the idea of like, well, I need to go to a space to go buy products might even feel like archaic, right? Right. All I want to do is buy a product. Am I just going to ask, questioning and then have that product show up on my doorstep, right?
Mhm.
So, which, has been the case now for a few years, but it's certainly going to become more and more the standard. So it's been fun. It's been fascinating, and particularly in the last few years, as AI has kind of taken more of a central role in that, helping companies figure out what and how to use it in the right capacity. I mean, yeah, it's been cool.
Talking actually, now that you bring up AI, so you emphasize like hyper personalization in your approach, like and very much surrounded around empathy. So with AI, I think a lot of people have a lot of gripes and worries about it because of it almost being impersonal. How do you look at that? Or like these
See, I think
solutions?
it's the other way. See, here's the thing. Everything we do is sort of focused on how do we make experience better, right?
Mhm.
And years ago, about 10 years ago, we were speaking on topics around how do we begin to personalize all, right? How do we use the data we have from either profile information or behavioral data to really start to, have digital experiences, start to display information that people needed and wanted time they needed or wanted it, right? At the time, we were talking about personalization. It was really segment driven, right? It was like, okay, well, this is your gender, this is your, general demographic, these are your behavioral traits, so we're going to show you X, Y, Z. And when you think about it, like, that's okay. And what we found was, on the whole, was like that was good and somewhat effective to a certain degree, but it missed the mark on a lot of things, and it generalized far too many types of experiences, particularly when you had brands that were trying to adhere to either gender specifications or frankly demographic specifications that weren't necessarily right.
Yeah.
The sun now, it's bad personalization. That's bad. So when you really think about it, what real form of a personalized experience is to be hyper personalized. We want to have 1,000 different data points on an individual in order to deliver right message, right product, right service, right action at the right time. You need that information to do that. And with the rise of generative AI, now AI taking, front and center on all the things we're doing, now we can actually finally deliver on that, right? Now you can have, like, if you think about like best experiences you have going to a store, or restaurant, or anywhere, right? I have to imagine, and tell me what you think, but like those are people who probably know you well. When you walk in, they already have, like, I know when I go to Pete's, and here in South Philly, and when, I walk in and they have, that beer that I love ready for me sitting at my table, right? Like, I love that, right? I love,
Yeah.
maybe probably a problem. They know we quite that well, but fine. I don't mind, right? But I love
Yeah.
it.
Bar as well.
Exactly. And that's the sort of experience you want, right? Well, that thing now we can deliver in a digital sense. Right? We can have that sort of depth of knowledge on an individual so that every time you show up, the action is either readily available to you or that action's already being taken on your with your approval in order to deliver the right experience. So that hyper personalization is critical. But so is context. Understand where you're at in your day, your life, right? Like, we joke all the time around tone of a conversation. Like, if you're going to have a conversation with virtual assistant, and it's, there are times where you want it to be sort of jokey and a little more fun and active, and there's times where you want it to be serious. If somebody's frustrated or upset, you don't pop in jokes at that point, right? Like you need to sort of meet people where they're at to a certain degree, and now we can do that, and that's a pretty cool time and place to be in the digital space.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of interesting things about AI that I think are extremely helpful and worthwhile. I think that the problem I guess I see with it is that it's not as advanced as a lot of people would like right now. And so like some of those things that we think it could be really good at are not yet in place. But there are for maybe personalization purposes, but for purposes of like different tools that are created that may assist in your everyday work, I think that is an incredible addition to how we do tedious activities that may take long. I love that it exists for that. I can't imagine how difficult it was to do certain things before and this is incorporated.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that it's like, if I think about like all of the little things that I don't want to do on a regular basis, as long as there's a step in the right direction and you're taking some of those things off my plate on a regular basis, like, I'm good to go. Like, that's an improvement for sure.
Do you have an example of um a way in which you utilized AI to cater a customer's experience that you distinctly remember being very successful?
Work that we've done, you're saying?
I'm sorry?
You're asking work that we've done?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we do this all the time now. A big part of the service we provide is really understanding, first and foremost, helping companies map out use cases that make sense for them to develop, AI solutions around, right? Um, One of the big things we focus on is helping them either two-sided to this, right? Either from a marketing and sales perspective, craft messages that are going to be hyper specific to individuals, right? So that's one part of this. And then the flip side of that is really just helping internally, like people like sales folks, really streamline their approach to communication that they'll provide so that when they're actually, say, sending an email, it's in their voice and their tone. And it sounds like it's not robotic. It sounds like it's coming from them. And in both of those cases, we do a lot of consulting and using the tools available to them, kind of build those systems and those like automation trails that help them do that work. And that's probably one of probably a dozen different types of use cases in which we're supporting clients on right now. But in all cases, that's a big part of our message from a customer experience, employee experience perspective. The more you can tailor the communication, the more you can tailor the experience to the individual, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have definitely seen some funny emails in my day that are clearly not going to be effective in their purpose because of the lack of personalization. Obviously, everyone wants to feel catered to and that they're, you know, I guess when it comes down to it, cared about, regardless of what the inquiry is. And I think that yeah, to be able to have those automations in place, because of course there are so many people out there that have certain cold outreach strategies that they're reaching out to a mass amount of people. And to have that be personalized as much as possible is difficult when they're doing it themselves because, the amount of time that that would take.
Totally. But if you think about the impact of them and how effective they're going to be, the more it can feel personal and actually personal, and that message is actually coming from a human, better off you be, right? And I can't tell you that you probably get the same thing, right? You probably your inbox flooded now with, I think it's hilarious. They have like one line in there about me, and then here's our offering, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not personalized. Like
Yeah.
that just all you do is look up some information about you and pop it in an email, right? There's definitely some opportunity there. And what we're really trying to do is help folks understand how do you get that a layer or two deeper so that, really you're just making the outreach easier on the whole.
Yeah, no, that is definitely something that is so helpful in that process for specifically sales as well, but also for any purpose, I guess, that you're doing outreach for.
Cool.
If they I think ideally everyone wants to be able to personalize their emails, but if they have certain quotas that they have to reach or whatever it may be, they might not be as successful because they're not personalized as much as they'd like. But to have a tool help them make something sound more personal at least is, you know, a good step.
For sure. Well, you can think about it from another end too. And so a lot of what we help develop as well are things like virtual assistants, right? I refuse to use the word chatbot because chatbot gets bad rap, right? But I like chatbots. I like the term virtual assistant because that's really what you're kind of getting out of it. And when you're building those things, like a lot of what we have to take into account is how do we intermingle a custom data set, something that's specific to, say, a knowledge base for an organization, and then layer on, okay, how are we going to tap that information at the right time to produce the right response for whatever, say, a customer has asked. If we're thinking about customer support or we're thinking about upfront in like a marketing or sales process, right? It's so important that you are leveraging not just the data and the conversational experience, but you're trying to make that sound natural, right? You're trying to make sure that it comes from a brand tone and voice that is specific to the organization. It's really intermingling a lot of that stuff. No different than sort of helping, sales support. You're really helping it, from a kind of customer support perspective as well.
Yeah, those are very, I think, especially for a lot of people that are talking to a virtual assistant are already frustrated. And so having the most human approach to that frustration is very helpful. I can understand the early ages of virtual assistants. I was going to say chatbot, but I will use virtual assistant. That there is more frustration to be made from talking to that. Just because it hadn't been fully developed into what it is now. Whereas when it's seemingly more human, you feel more at ease with your problems, especially when they're catered to solving your problems better.
Right.
I also think it's very interesting. What do you think about this? Of the way in which AI is advancing for those purposes of making um things seem more human. Do you think that there's going to be this revolution in the future about people trying to get away from these kinds of tools because people don't understand the difference? I know that's very
I know what you're asking. I know what you're asking. I think one of the big challenges with AI on the whole is people have expectations of machines that they probably shouldn't have, right? Like I think people expect more out of the technology than they expect out of one another. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. So, before we start to, turn away from what the machines offer us, et cetera, like I do believe there's a little bit of a reckoning coming around what are our needs and expectations of one another. Because at the end of the day, I think it's interesting that like we've never been asked, make it sound less human. We've never been asked, we want this to be more machinery, more machine-like and robotic. We've certainly had voice tones that are more serious, or we've certainly been asked to make sure that it's clear that it's a bot or that it's a virtual assistant, right?
Yeah,
Versus
be
a
transparent.
human. But like, I can't recall a time when someone said like, "Well, I want this to be less human," and yet what you find is, the more human you make them, the more there seems to be this expectations, the more accurate or effective they need to be on the whole. When the reality is like they just need to do a job, right? So I think we're going to be in this kind of weird state at some point where, I'd be very curious to see what happens with how people sort of interact with the technology and what their expectations are going to look like as far as, would I prefer to deal with a human at some point, right? When we talk about like replacing sales processes and speeding them up and making them more personalized, we're doing that in the interest of trying to make these experiences more human. But at some point, you probably really are going to want to talk to a human, right? At some point, I want to have this sort of face-to-face communication, even as we're having, right? So when and how and where does that experience exist in this funnel? Like, it's a really good question because I think, the more human we make them over time, or is there going to be this expectation at some point that that's going to be good enough? And, am I going to just be able to sort of deal with that? And then I'm never going to have to talk to people again. Like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
The reason we want these things to be human is because we like interacting with one another. I think there's a certain psychology in that, but it's so interesting to me because like the more we start to deal with the machines on a whole on a regular basis, and the more humanistic they are, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what that looks like over the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that it's possible that one day someone, maybe a company as a whole, probably a larger one for it to actually make some kind of impact, whatever it may be, that um someone will do something wrong. Or go too far with what they're doing with AI or AI tools or virtual assistants or whatever it may be, that is enhancing a user experience to make it more human, replacing humans in that way, which is kind of funny. But and then maybe we'll figure out that maybe this, maybe this isn't great in every aspect. But I think it's an important conversation to have of where a human should always be in the process. Like,
Yeah.
for example, what we talked about with sales is the idea that it's great to use an AI tool to enhance this process, in the idea that there might be a quota that a sales outreach or an outreach team has to reach, and using an AI tool to personalize those messages in order to reach more people might be really helpful. And honestly, they're probably already working in a robotic way already prior to using AI, where they're not being as personal because of a quota that is having to be met or whatever it may be. And so that makes sense. And that doesn't necessarily feel very shallow, so to speak. I think that's just a strategy. Whereas once they make a connection for a sale or they have a lead, you're probably going to want to get on a call with a person.
So I suppose I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I suppose that this is sort of what we need to measure over time, right? Is like, at what point does that trade-off need to happen? I tend to believe, that like, you're always going to need humans in the loop to some degree. Our general philosophy at O3 is that, we're not here to replace humans. We're here to augment them, and we're here to make them better. We're here to make those human experiences better. But like, at the end of the day, again, fundamentally, I think that does require at some point some human interaction, right? But I do think it's interesting, and go back to your point about, replacing some of these processes that have been sort of more robotic over time and really improving them. Funny, I was talking to colleague recently, and we were talking about new phone systems that are going into place for kind of train a whole AI system on, say, like one salesperson takes 4 or 5 calls, and then they can start doing these sort of automated calling for you. I thought that was fascinating. And like, where are these systems, of course, but like that, they're already piloting it. They went through the process very quickly. And I'm like, are you sure your customers really going to want this? Right. And at the end of the day, to his credit, like they had already done the testing and they said, for whatever reason, it fits well with their customer base and all this other stuff. But like, I think that's just as important as doing the implementation, is trying to figure out like where and how do you want, like, be very deliberate about how you fit humans in the loop on the process and design them into the strategy so that your results are sort of indicative of what people expect, versus just trying to jam it into, or we're just going to replace all our salespeople with, this system. There's a lot to be said for that. And I think there's a lot of value that, companies are going to need to extract out of understanding how humans fit in the loop in order to really sort of justify, putting these things in place.
Exactly. I 100% think that's true. And I think that people will always be implementing more and more tools into their everyday like work life, just because if it's making things easier, then of course we're going to learn new things and know how to use them so that they're, making your processes easier. But at the same time, I think that even though there are tools put out there that may be able to replace more maybe minor positions, for lack of a better phrasing, for very specific things, I think that it's very important to always keep in mind where a human should be best in. And that's, I completely agree.
100%.
I think this was an incredible philosophical conversation that I did not expect to have. But we're just over time, so I think this is a perfect place to end. But thank you for delving into this with me so much. I thought this was really fun, and I do really love to talk about the different people's opinions on like the complexities of AI and how they're going to impact us in the future and like what to look out for.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening. I hope you had fun, and I hope that you get to get as much out of this as I got to. And I appreciate you guys, and thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.